am. Just to note that this meeting is being recorded. It is being conducted in a hybrid manner so the public can participate online as well. Everybody's here in person, so as part of the committee, so we can you forego roll call votes.
We should introduce ourselves.
Yeah, we should introduce. I'm Tom Morelli, the chair here of the General Bylaw Review Committee. This committee was established last year to serve as a kind of a review committee to review all the town's bylaws, propose new bylaws, propose changes to the current bylaws, and deletions if so needed.
And
the other members of the committee?
Jeremy, Joy Mott.
Very much. So the intent for this meeting was going to be a review of the potential noise bylaw that we would have in front of us for the town meeting. As proposed by proposed by this committee, and Carl Hummel has done a great deal of work compiling. However, I know that there are members of the committee that have concerns about it going on the annual town meeting. So I just want to, before we dove in, don't want to give the entire presentation if we decide that we're gonna postpone it. So I know.
I'm concerned about it because being the way the town annual meeting this year is going to be, I feel we're adding more to what is going on. And this is going to be a contentious meeting. We all know that there's going to be what with the school budget and everybody else coming. And I think adding this to it makes it even more. So that's my personal feeling.
You want to postpone it to
Till the fall.
contentious nature of it.
Yes.
or if there's a summer special town meeting.
Right, if there's some special.
To the way we would phrase the language to a future town meeting, and then we don't tie ourselves into one.
Correct.
And Karen, you feel the same way? How do you feel, Karen?
Well, when my kids or my kids' friends ask me, when's a good time to have a baby? My answer is there is never a good time to have a baby because you can always come up with reasons to not have a baby. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough living space. We're not married yet. We don't have enough support from the parents. The same way, there's never really a good time to present a warrant article. There'll always be something on it. However, I do agree that the school budget is going to be very controversial because they're asking for such a high 2.5 override. The town administrator bylaw may or may not be controversial. It's unclear whether or not the noise bylaw will be contentious or not until we actually get feedback from the citizens. There are some people in town, some businesses in town that we discussed that might be adversely impacted. Contractors will basically, from what I've heard, will do whatever the town says. But it might be a case where there are a lot of citizens who would want to change whatever we presented as a document and change the language on the floor, and that would stretch out an already long meeting. So I would prefer to do it, but I'm going to agree with you that yes, it might be something too much after the end of the 1.5 hour knockdown, drag down fight on the school budget. What I'd ask then is that I advertise, we go back to the select board to say we're going to defer ATM for a future one, but then in another couple of weeks, we would hold, I would do much more advertising like I didn't do last week. We get something in the online newspaper, we post it on the website, I maybe do PR releases or with someone. With the expectation is that we would have one hearing before ATM just to get feedback. And then we'd have another one over the summer perhaps, where we would say, here's what our language is. And then we'd be ready for a future topic.
I agree with that timeline. I mean, I agree with Carl and that there's no good time to have a contentious discussion at town meeting, you know, and told the moderator doesn't like those.
I agree with that. However, the way this one looks is going to be, I think it's in our best interest.
Yeah,
I'm in favor of postponing just because I do feel like, we would, gain insight from the public, having a couple of listening sessions, not just one.
yeah,
Maybe like, especially like, like things that, like the summer is a noisier time in general. And so like the idea of what a noise bylaw should or could be, and what it shouldn't be, could be fresher in people's heads. Cause like, we're having all these discussions about, oh, well, what about the late night basketball courts and stuff like that? Well, if we're having listening sessions while those are going on, we have a very different discussion, I feel.
and we can also send a police officer or the health agent out with a noise meter standing on the property.
Yeah,
Say,
no, absolutely. So we have,
does this, not saying whether it's a violation or not, but then they could come back and inform us that, oh, they were 55 decibels,
Yeah.
which would be 5 decibels above 50.
I
If a
just-
drive-in is holding a concert, how much noise do they generate?
I just don't want to come to town and footloose by accident. You know what I mean? But, and like, again, that's why I think like having a longer discussion with this might be valuable. And so I'm in favor of, going to the board and saying, what, we would be in favor of passing this over for this meeting and deferring to a future meeting. Not just say you haven't done a great deal of work and we thank you. I just don't want that work to.
Yeah, my concern is that we haven't been asked to do a Prop 2.5 override in 10 years. Normally, they would have a cadence of every 5 years, but they had COVID happen and got COVID relief money, and then they drew down their reserve funds the past 2 years, which is why they're now coming in saying we have to have a really big increase. And that's what's going to be causing. They're asking, the way that it was characterized, they're asking for a bigger raise than we pay our entire police.
That's a discussion for
Okay.
the floor, I don't wanna, I don't wanna weigh in on the school budget, but
Okay.
I do agree that it is going to be contentious, and that is possible reason to,
What I would like is to get a sense that it's okay for me to talk to media sources, show them the slide deck.
yeah, I mean, I'd be okay with that, like, this is still the bylaw that we intend on putting in front of the, voters when we do. It's just a matter of, we don't think we'd like feedback beforehand. Make it a document that, or make it a bylaw that the public very much,
Okay.
has waited on.
So that I have something to tie into a news story. Can we set a date for when we would have something before ATM sometime in mid-April?
Well, so do we want it before ATM? Because the thing is, like, I don't want to confuse the issue because it's still going to be a placeholder on the warrant. I don't want
Okay.
to give the false impression that it's going to be on the annual town meeting. So perhaps we could wait until May
Okay. So
and maybe,
third week in May.
the third week in May would be a good, I'd say we can start advertising for the third week in May now, with the intent that can be our. I mean, that's how I feel. Are you in agreement? I don't want to have this listen and people are all fired up and think it's gonna be on the warrant and it's not.
Well, it's on the.
Well, it's on the warrant, but like, I don't want people to, get the impression that.
Do you have you have a calendar? For
Yep.
The third one is.
Third week in May,
19th, maybe?
Tuesday the 19th,
Can we do it on a Wednesday?
No, Wednesday.
Wednesday the 20th.
Yeah, Wednesday, the 20th sounds good to me. Okay. And so I can think we can pass over the actual presentation today.
Yes, so I will update my slide deck to change the date from March 22nd to May
Thank you for all the
20th.
work.
And at that point, I will work with Jeremy and we can start talking about what the different options are for media. Okay, that would be our campaign guide.
So I'm gonna skip ahead to the town administrator bylaw. My profuse apologies. I had thought I had sent this to everyone, but I apparently hadn't when I got it. And also without thinking, I didn't put it on the schedule because I thought I was waiting for legal review. However, we have it. We now have it. It's been, a placeholder's been put on the warrant. We've been asked to weigh in on it. I know Carl, I don't know if everybody saw Carl's notes.
I was able to look at it this afternoon for about an hour.
I have some, I guess I have some rebuttals to some of your notes.
Yes, and if you give me the rebuttals, then I will change what I did and then make a red line document, send it off to town, to town council, select board, Jeremy, for their looking at. Saying that I've incorporated feedback from the rest of us.
So, second here. I guess like the first thing I wanted to weigh in. So, has everybody got a chance to look at it?
Yes.
So let's start with Carl's notes. Carl, one of your notes was, I just want to jump down to 3.11
Sure.
about establishing the residency requirement.
Right.
Why? So I guess I don't understand why you're thinking went there, because the residency requirements for boards, commissions, and committees.
Right, I was thinking about that, but it's, so the residency requirement is not for town officers, so that doesn't apply.
Okay, yeah.
Scratch that out.
We can fix that.
But I still have the question of what's the difference between a town officer and a town administrative officer and a town chief administrator officer? Because it specifically says that an administrative officer can be appointed as an interim.
So, I mean, I would say that in my reading of it, administrative is like an operating, like,
Well, like I'm saying, if it's
Actually-
defined in a regulation or a policy, it needs to refer to that. So I will pass this along to Jeremy and see.
well, so I guess my thing is, rather than saying, is there a difference between an officer and administrative officer, we could ask that they define administrative.
Okay,
Because I think it's clear that, I think the idea is, it's clear that it's the officer, like him being an officer with administrative powers. But we just have to define what administrative means.
right. And part of this may be that he swiped it from the Upton's Town Manager Special Act, and it may have been defined as an Upton policy or an Upton regulation.
Right. Your note on 2A, are there any employees of the town not under the jurisdiction of the board? I think that's been subject to debate and discussion over the years.
Because it is sort of hinted at later on in the bylaw, and also in terms of budgeting.
Yeah, well. I mean, there are employees of the town that are under jurisdiction of other elected boards and bodies,
Like the chief assessor.
like the principal assessor, like Parks Commission, like. Not every single lifeguard's appointed by the select board, you know. These are hired by the Parks Department. So.
Right, and so the question is whether the town administrator delegates or whether they have the ability to do personnel actions against them.
I think that would be the Parks Commission, right?
It's unclear, that's why I'm raising the issue.
What do you guys think?
So if the parks, so I could give the specific example of parks lifeguard.
In the end, wouldn't the town administrator though have the ultimate,
Well, that's what we're talking about,
like final say, but like you said, they work for the Parks Commissioner, but doesn't Parks report to town administrator?
No,
Technically, they report to the elected.
Except for the director, who's a town employee.
and that's where it gets kind of confusing. Another example is the assistant town clerk is an employee of the town, but they work for the town clerk, who is an elected official. So that's another,
Well, they work at the direction of the town clerk. They're appointed through the select board.
right, they're appointed by the select board, but it's unclear. That's why I'm calling out.
Well, so I think in that case, it's that they're appointing authorities at select board, but their kind of managerial authority is the town clerk. So I see those as two different things.
Mhm.
And you,
But in the end, isn't that position's gonna change and that will be an appointed higher position?
so we still need to cross that. We still need to cross that
I was
bridge.
thinking ahead of time.
Yeah, no, if that's the intent, I think that's.
We have to pass something for the way things are now.
You're right. No, exactly.
A year at the follow, next year's annual town meeting, we have to have two bylaw changes, one to make the town clerk appointed and second to change whatever section here refers to.
I mean, for 2B, I kind of,
I'm gonna die on that hill and wearing my finance committee hat.
yeah, well, but the thing is, it's not how it operates right now.
It doesn't operate that way right now because for this fiscal year, both the select board and the finance committee directly delegated that responsibility to the town administrator. But in the past, it has been a big deal.
Right, but I think, like, I guess my understanding is that the select board presents a budget, the finance committee weighs in on it and can recommend it or not.
And that is not the truth. According to the Massachusetts Association of Finance Committees, absent any other controlling language in a bylaw, the finance committee and not the select board is responsible for presenting the budget.
I'm okay with putting a separate sentence in there as you suggested.
Yeah.
And the chair of the finance committee saying that, you know, if considering that both bodies
Yes.
saw the town administrator as a fit to do this, I think that
Yes.
it's all right to give them that power. Are there any town departments not under the jurisdiction of the board which are part of the balanced budget? Well, so my response to that, the additional 2B, are there any town departments not under the jurisdiction of the board? Is that the town like the select board's not the one who's voting on the budget, right? They're presenting a budget for everybody else to vote on. It's the town meeting, it's just the legislative authority which controls the purse strings, which is the one who has a final say over that. So they're just, what the town administrator is doing is just making a suggestion.
Okay, so but the problem is in section 2B, the last thing after the last comma, for departments under the jurisdiction of the board. Maybe we need to delete that and say they're presenting it for the entire town. See, anytime this document says jurisdiction of the board, that raises a red flag for me because it doesn't cover planning board and all of those other things which are not under the jurisdiction of the board. And maybe Upton does things differently, and that's.
So let me ask, right now, how does the Books Commission, for example, or the library, how does their budget get added to the budget?
They talk to Jeremy. And Jeremy works with them on it, but I don't want to have language in here which abrogates the ability of those other departments to do things. And so that's why this is a question I give to Jeremy when he gets back and say, how do you see this working?
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. How does this language interact with union contracts? Like, what do you mean by that?
To see. Again, this section authorizes the town administrator to set the salary of a town officer and a town employee. But how does that factor into the fact that they're negotiating a union contract? Elsewhere, it says that they are the primary person negotiating the contract. But the union contract says what the salary is going to be, not the town administrator.
But that's how it works. I mean, you're fixing it as part of the budget process and you're fixing it as part of the hiring process. I mean, if you see that the contract supersedes that either way. You know,
And if it supersedes it, then we should, it's just another case where I'm asking for clarification. And it may be that since Jeremy has been doing this kind of finance stuff for decades, he can come back and very clearly say, no, it's not an issue. Or he might say, oh, that is an issue here in Mendon, let's change the language. I'm going to raise it again. The general observation I made to him when I got on the FinCom is, I'll come up with points like this, and 90% of the time, they're not an issue, but 10%, it'll be something that you'll say, oh, let's look into it. Over time, I'm hoping to raise that up to like 25 or 30% of the time I actually come up with something that needs to be dealt with. And my response is, I have no ego invested. If someone says, Carl, you're wrong, I say, great, now I'm doing better.
I feel, I've seen that phrase before, fixing the compensation within the appropriate amounts. And I've seen that phrase before, and it's never been an issue with union contracts. Like, because the union contract itself, that's fixing the compensation, right? But like negotiating the contract is part of the process of fixing the compensation. It's like how I look at it.
But here's the controlling sentence. The following responsibilities and authority devolve from the select board to the town administrator. Fixing. So that's where I want
Well,
to
the
say.
select board's doing it now.
Right, okay, so it may not be an issue.
But okay, I mean, we can raise it to them.
Yeah.
I just, the way I look at it is like the negotiation of the contracts, part of that fixing the compensation.
Okay.
And just like you negotiate a contract with, say, the police chief or fire chief, you know.
Right.
It's just, you can't do it. But the important thing in that sense is within the appropriate amounts. You can't give them more than is budgeted.
Right, but here's the thing. The town administrator is the chief negotiator, but the select board are the ones who vote and agree to accept a union contract. So that contradicts this section that says that the town administrator.
Let's bring it to him. Let's bring it to him. I think it's,
Yeah.
I don't see it as an issue, but we can
Oh,
definitely.
none of these are issues. This is just my going through and thinking, what could possibly go wrong?
To E, I have no issues with your asking for additional duties for the chief procurement officer.
There is another paragraph, but there should be a reference saying, here's where CPO is defined.
And I have a. So for 3 for the residency requirement.
Yeah, we decided to.
Let's nix
That's
that.
possible.
Other than that, I have no other, I agree with likely all of your,
Yeah.
I agree with the rest of your questions to
Yeah.
send to Jeremy.
My more general thing is there a list of town officers? Because there's a chapter 3 of the bylaws that says the town officers do this, and this, but there's not an enumerated list of who they are. Town officers, one of their responsibilities
Is
is
there a definition?
well, that's what I do. It's not in the actual general bylaws, but that's what I'm saying. Is that something that we want to think about? Is there a definition of a department head?
Any other thoughts on this list from Carl? Let's go over it.
Yeah.
Yes, as I said, my goal is to look at this and say, if we had a malicious town administrator, what's the worst they could do?
Right.
And while I really like Jeremy, the goal is to establish the statutory authority of the office for future office holders.
Anything from the public?
This is what we do in our meetings. We're doing a rolling review of the entire bylaw, all like 35 or 40 sections. And that's why every town meeting, special town meeting, one or two on there, we're updating things. Or we've worked with another board or commission and they're updating things. So the Conservation Commission updated theirs last time. This annual town meeting, land use is updating. And Council on Aging. Oh, Jason's on.
Hey, Jason, you want to weigh in?
How much of the conversation am I
He's
looking
been there for a
at?
while. I've seen his little.
I came in during when you were talking about the things Jeremy could do if he left. Some of that the select board has talked about, and basically on the finer points, we just want the lawyers to say yes or no, because it's really the macro level that's most important. This is like the step up from no rules. And so we kind of want to learn from whatever the impact of this is over the next couple of years here. But we don't want to direct all the finer points without knowing what the sort of outcome of that is. So although I hear you, the likelihood of that being some of those things being executed through the bylaw are rare enough to not spend a terrible amount of time on it. And I think that's I'm not a lawyer, but in working with lawyers, it seems like we just want to keep it vague enough that it doesn't become a point of contention.
Okay, what I will do is I will mark up the Word doc with notes, and then I'll mail that to you and Jeremy, and the two of you can decide whether you want to bring that to the select. Get back to me.
I'll accept a motion for the General Bylaw Review Committee to support this bylaw pending both a legal review and clarifications to the question that Carl has asked.
Will be asking. Yeah.
Second.
All right, discussion. We've been having discussion, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, did we actually make a motion to suggest passing over the noise bylaw, or we, okay. Can I have a motion to suggest passing over the noise bylaw?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. Great. Okay, so Michael, since thought we were going to be doing a full-on review of the noise bylaw today, I didn't know that we were going to have time to talk with you, but since you're here, I'm happy to have you. But we won't actually take any votes on whether or not to support your candidates, because you weren't on the agenda. But since you're here, we're happy to talk to you.
Now got a great example of the kind of stuff that we spend an hour and a half every 2 weeks or 2 times a month arguing about.
Sounds very interesting.
You think it's interesting?
Takes a special kind of
Yeah,
person to find this
sounds
interesting.
like you're in the right place.
Why? Yeah, what I heard briefly just sounds very interesting.
So, how long have you lived in town?
My wife and I moved here in 2004. Raised 3 boys. They're all in school now, college. Was active in the local scouts, local youth sports, high school sports, and recently became a member, but I think it's on hold right now, the senior center building. So I saw there was a potential opening, and I love this town. Want to get back to it, and willing to what I can to sit on a committee such as this, help out.
Why general bylaw movement?
Well, my profession is legal. I like reading. I do a lot of reading, writing for the courts. And this is a very interesting topic, attorney bylaws, and I feel like I could add to it. I think if there's movement to amend, certainly like to give my hand to help. What I can just to review and raise questions and add to the discussion.
Awesome. Any follow-up questions?
Are you a practicing attorney?
Yes.
So what kind of recommendations I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, obviously. I just dealt with regulators and lawyers a lot. What are you able to say and not say about things from a legal standpoint, given that we have a town council who gives official town opinions on things?
Right. Step on the town council now. I would just give an input as to, words matter. So I would certainly give an input as to how sentences are phrased. What this potentially could, similar to what the questions you were raising.
Yeah, the one I always have to remind people of is that shall is
Right.
required.
Correct. Right. Versus must. Right.
Or may,
Correct.
shall or may. The two.
Yes, carries much weight over. So that's what I do. I do work reports for the court. But I certainly would limit my role regarding legal. My input would be if I thought there was a potential conflict or a problem down the road.
You have a background or have you ever been involved with municipal law?
No, that's
Town
an
meeting law?
area. No, I've not been a part of it. I do a lot of real estate. I do a lot of family, but not municipal.
I think it would be helpful to have somebody who at least has a legal eye on the committee. However, since we didn't put you on the agenda, I'm not going to I don't think we should take a vote either way. But next meeting, I think, based on our discussion with you, I think we'd be happy to weigh in. Which in the next meeting would be in 2 weeks from tomorrow. And,
Is that via Zoom?
Yes.
yeah, we usually meet via, Teams, but we generally meet remotely. We tried to do some non-remote meetings here and there. So that would be April 8th at 6:30 p.m.
You already have a town mendonma account?
I do. I need to follow up on that.
Okay.
I don't think there's. Yes, I think I do, but it's. I don't think it's been active.
Okay, then they would turn it back on. Ellen Agro, if you were appointed, would bug you about making sure you completed your mandatory training.
Yeah, I recently did one this past summer.
Then it may still be applicable, and she would have a record of that.
I have Jason Cooter. Looks like he's raising his hand.
So couple of just points of order. If you guys need to appoint Mike earlier, it's possible for the chair to just send a letter to the select board and we can get him on the April 1st agenda. That's up to you guys. I'm not pushing that. If you need him, I'm throwing that out there. The second question though I have is just about the previous agenda item, the passing over the noise bylaw. Are you going to use that opportunity during the Passover to explain why it's there in the first place, or are you just gonna move through it quickly? And I don't have a preference for either one. I'm just curious. So those are my two questions.
We can make that decision at that. very time depending on how late it is.
I guess I would prefer that when you pass over items in general, or suggest passing them over, that it's just like a brief, like, we are going to bring this back at a later time or something like we won't have to go into what it is. That's my own personal preference. Because we're not litigating the item at all for passing it over, we're just voting to pass it over. Or making a motion to pass it over. And if the public really wants to debate a noise bylaw, then in there, that's their purview, but to vote that passover down. But that's how I feel, is not to get too into the weeds on it, and just to say we're going to pass this over. We're making a motion to pass this over due to wanting to bring it back a later time.
Perfect. Thanks.
And as for the April 1st thing, I mean, I personally could write a letter for my own personal being in favor of Michael to be on the committee, but I just don't feel comfortable as speaking for the committee without us taking like an official vote or anything.
I work with him on the
Yeah.
senior center, so I'm okay with that.
But that's my own take on it.
I don't see that there's nothing contentious at the April 8th meeting that we're planning on talking about. So
Right. And
you're welcome to show up and give us input and be a non-voting member.
yeah, absolutely. And also keep in mind the select board's also welcome to appoint someone without our feedback.
But we have an established policy on that, which according to Jeremy, it's now on the website. There's no reason to deviate from that in absent of an emergency.
That is correct. Carl definitely knows the procedure, and
I don't know the updated one, so I'd have to go read the new one.
That is a fair response. Yeah. So, no, if there's no immediate need, then follow the procedure, and I'm sure Mike wouldn't have any problems being a non-voting contributor at any of your upcoming meetings until we get to it. That's fine. Also fully in support of Mike Byrne as a citizen of Mendon.
Right. Yeah. Well, do we have any other questions for Mike? Other than that, I think that we've reached the end of our agenda.
I have a good and welfare kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is on there. The town clerk received a citizen petition to discuss traffic on Cemetery Hill and related to closing on Providence Street. I provided some private feedback on the actual language, but it was being reviewed by town council. So my question for Jason is, perhaps you discuss at the April 1st, if you want the GBRC to give input on that citizen petition and point out possible problems with it. Is
it going to be a bylaw?
It's unclear what it's going to be. I'm hoping the town clerk explains, I'm hoping town council explains what that being on the warrant, if it passes, what it actually becomes. It's not a bylaw, but it is something that's going to impact governance of the town.
Yeah,
And-
so that'll be under discussion for a while. I think, it's going to take some conversation by a lot of people to decide where to go, and also to find out what all the limits are. So that's a wait and see thing, unfortunately, for right now.
Okay, well, you got my email response, and
Yep,
and
I do,
private-
and that's been shared.
send them their input. So I will hold my horses and not say anything further until we get an official response from the select board to keep weighing in on it.
I don't think we have anything else, so I'll accept a motion to adjourn until April 8th.
I so move.
So move second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you guys for coming.
Have a great night.
6:30. And the town clerk pointed out to me that I'm behind on a couple of minutes, so I'll be presenting, getting those updated. They'll be available for next